We've got a thanks. We got a topic for today, which is memory links and the life forces. But I am working on having some sort of introduction to each of the forums. So it places as I want to experiment with general ways of saying what we are. Pelin is a very unusual body of knowledge. It's a school of thought and practice. And we, as we can see from these small meetings, it is not widely known. Yet there is within Pelin contribution, training, and our tools a robust strength. These can for sure help. We have the modesty of the Pelin truth line, which does represent a real theoretical and philosophical sophistication. We aren't claiming either we have it all or that it will be easy. We combine that modesty with the audacity that our tools can be applied to just about anything. We have, just take feelings of accomplishment. We have our tools, we have our odd words, we have our simple words, we have our unique diagrams. If we just take feelings of accomplishment, simply put, FOAs will get you through just about anything. And without FOAs, anything can take you down. I mean, that's a big statement. And yet we can put it into effect. And they're tools, so the statement, FOAs will get you through anything. Yeah, but I got to find the right ones. I've got to find the right ones that really bring in the feeling of accomplishment. If I get that, and if I don't sabotage it, what we call feelings of accomplishment, there's no question. They've got people through abusive families. They've got people through slavery. I've got people through concentration camps. But it's a tool. It's not as if, it's not a pill. FOA pills. But if we get the right feelings of accomplishment, it will get us through just about anything. That's a particular challenge to any of us when we feel terrible. Because then it's the challenge of, am I getting all the help I could to get the right feelings of accomplishment? Am I letting someone take me by the hand and get me into the swimming pool? Or put the vacuum cleaner in my hand so I do the floor. They're ones that work for me. So I just want to put that background in as we're coming into a very specific topic today, memory links and the life forces. The Greeks say character is destiny. And I guess we say with memory links, the past forms our character. So what we're looking at today is what are the roots of my particular configuration of the part of me that wants to be the center of attention and has a propensity to take risks and perhaps has a well of creativity inside me. That's the performance life force. And it has that balance with the part of me that needs to have the bills paid. There needs to be food in the fridge. Papers need to be organized. We need to survive materially and financially. And that's the material life force. The performance life force is when we're pretty full of ourselves. It's not quite good enough, and it's not quite the right. I need a t-shirt. But my cap this is my James Carville persona. Okay. James Carville is the toughest, probably, of American political strategists. And famously, he's the person who came up with the phrase, "Is the economy stupid?" and got Bill Clinton elected. Anyway, I'm an admirer of James Carville, and he always wears a baseball cap. And that's performance life force. And then we come into caring life force, and my configuration, as I've shared here before, is probably that. The caring life force is by far the biggest one for me. The need to be loved, the need to give love, the need to be accepted just for who we are, the need for emotional security, which comes from a small group of people. Performance life force is large groups of people. Performance life force is an audience. If you're looking at the performance life force dynamics and the people who are in the performance life force, there's always an audience. The audience at times is quite complex. Someone said William Faulkner's caring life force was a lot met by his hunting buddies who weren't really into literature. And at one point, when I think almost all the novels were out of print, one of these hunting buddies said to him, "Bill, why do you keep doing it? A lot of people aren't very interested in what you're writing." And he said, "When I'm gone, they will remember me." And he was right. At times, the audience of the performance life force might be God. It might be posterity. It's complex, but there is always an audience in performance life force, always. And that's large numbers. Caring life force is small numbers, is the people who care about us and who want to care for us. The phrase loved ones really covers caring life force. That's what it's about. So that's a sort of repetition of definitions that we've had before. But as I said in my introduction, there's a robust strength in these tools, and we almost can't it's almost impossible to go over the basic definitions of the tools too often. It's always useful to go back to the basic definition. Well, as I said earlier, these are feelings of accomplishment. And the definition is that sophisticated thing, the difference between the feeling and the accomplishment. So it's always useful to revisit the basic definitions of the tools, because that's where some of the robust strength comes from. And that's also where the challenge comes from, because, you know, what is it in my background? What is it in my memory links that my material life force is dangerously small? And somehow I want to put a certain sort of dependency on the caring life force. Nikki, I'm holding up the circles, and the caring life force is a little more than half, and the performance life force, the red's about a third, and the material life force is a bit of a sliver, like an eighth, just to fill you in on that. Yeah, that, and yet going back to the Greeks, character is destiny. There's a way. This is my destiny. This is my past. There is a way. This is who I am. So, in a sense, what I have to offer comes from the memory links that put caring life force predominantly within my character and personality. And in a way, they're right. That's my destiny. I can use this, like I said earlier about feelings of accomplishment. I can use this for survival stuff. You know, come on, you need to expand your I'm just fiddling with the little gadget. Yeah, you know, you need to expand your material life force, Peter Fleming, and you need to expand and make the performance life, give the performance life force a prominence, because in this diagram, Nikki, it's sort of about a bit more than a third material, a bit more than a third performance, and a narrowed down bit of caring life force. You know, if there's going to be this material around when I'm gone, that's performance life force and material life force. Yeah. Caring life force will mean you love me, and for that I'm grateful, but performance life force will mean I'm remembered after I'm gone. And material life force will mean I'm organized enough. So what I leave behind me is very, very organized. To someone who is organized, oh, I'm an organized person. You know, I'm an ambitious person, but I'm an organized, ambitious person. Oh, here's this body of knowledge that is very organized. I could do something with that. That might feed my ambition. Caring life force will just get in the way of that. And then we take it back to, where did this come from, okay? There's a piece of methodology that I'd like to get at, not today. I'll try and say it briefly here. What it is about is what we're in a sense always doing with Pelham. That's where the memory links and how memory links work is so important because we take where someone is now, that is the, we take where somebody is now, that vertical diagram, arrow, and we sort of go back, okay? And within that, we find the sort of uniqueness of somebody. So it's going back with someone's own particular story. And, as much as we can, we go back to the beginning. And that is different than, I can't quite get at it here, so I really will be careful not to spend much time on it. That is different than saying, oh, this person has this sort of stuff in their past. Relationship with a mother or father. And because of that, they will turn out to be a particular person, okay? And we're doing something quite different than that because, and I'm sorry that's a bit unclear, but I'll just leave it now, otherwise I'll try and solve a problem of presentation while I'm presenting, and that's not me at my best. But what is it in my past that made the caring life force so predominant in my character, my destiny? And that's my happy childhood and seeing other children did not have what I had. I can remember, we ended up being very good friends and stayed in contact for a long time. But his name was Brian Gray, and he came to the class, it was primary school, in the middle of the year. And I could see he was really thrown off, he sort of didn't belong anywhere, and not belonging anywhere was extraordinarily hard for him. And I just noticed it as a child, as a relatively small child, I noticed that. I guess I noticed he is someone who doesn't have what I had, because I had two loving parents and a sister I was close to, and just totally took that for granted. That's life. And I noticed in school it was not life. Some people didn't have that. A lot of people will develop a predominance of caring life force because they did not have it as a child. Not because they had it, but because they did not have it. So there's nothing within the caring life, within memory links, we're exploring someone's own story, someone's own narrative. We're not explaining away their life with our theory. And I think that's different. But anyway, that's the bit I said I wouldn't go into. Keeping with the simplicity of it here. Yeah, as you're finding out, okay, what are my roots of this? Where did the bit that I get my performance life force from? Because my performance life force, it's always been there. You don't, have the, I used about myself, I always used about David. You don't have the audacities to set up your own school of thought and practice from your caring life force. That's performance life force, for sure. So, I've got a streak of that. The Australia that I grew up in, and I still think it's true of Australia, we, it was almost a rite of passage to travel. You travel. You went to Europe, you traveled. In fact, my daughter, who lives in Canada, at the time was living in a place called Whistler in British Columbia, which is a very famous ski resort. And I was visiting, and she came to me one day and said, "Papa, you're just a Jaffa." I said, "What?" She said, "You're just a Jaffa. You're just a Jaffa." And I said, "What's a Jaffa?" "Just another fucking Australian." Because there are all these Australians who went to the ski resort to be ski bums. So I'm a Jaffa. And so I've got this, streak of performance life force. It's really quite strong that I could build on. My minuscule, my too small material life force. It's the part of me that's sort of mommy's boy. I want someone else to look after it. Mummy will come and look after it, or daddy will come along and look after it, and I don't have to worry about it. And the world is not like that. So I guess what we're doing is looking at how we can use these tools, okay? And even the, overwhelming memory link moment, because that's the one that will crush us. If we could take each of those, there's 5 of them there, and trace each of those back, okay? If we could separate them out, and here we're talking about really heavy stuff. Here we're talking about the part of life that's just too much to bear. That's what an overwhelming memory link moment. And one of the things we're saying here, which is in different places, it's sort of quite a radical point of view. Because one of the things we're saying, it's not just one traumatic, it's hardly ever just one traumatic experience. When there is trauma, there's the things that makes trauma so perhaps inevitably destructive is because there are other negative memory links that are supporting it. It's just not that one thing. But with overwhelming referral moments and looking at this, we're saying here diagrammatically that there's 6, okay? If the main one is someone, traumatic memory links about authority figures, okay? So that's the big one. That will have its history. That will have its memory link. That will have its history. That memory link will have its history. But the other ones that come in, like, the weather's lousy, or the teenage child is getting into trouble and it's very scary, and he's not communicating with his wife, and in fact he's having an affair. What are the memory links about those things? What are the memory links about having an affair? What are the memory links about being scared of the teenager not coming through, going down a wrong path? It's going to be. And what are the memory links about the lousy weather? So it's just not the memory links about authority figures and a boss that is my hypothetical client, is not just the boss with whom he cannot relate because he cannot relate to authority figures. There's these other things coming in as well. But the traumatic side of it, which is the way we've sort of visualized it here, is that heavy memory. We're not denying that. That is the trauma. That is the father who beat him up, and then the school principal who picked on him, to use different examples. So we can understand our own particular mix of life forces, and we can look at where they came from. That enables us to understand the tool better and to apply the tool more effectively for ourselves and for others. And one of the things we say in our work, the efficacy of it is almost always when we apply the tools to ourselves first. Yeah. The application is applying to the tools to ourselves first. The understanding of them, it often works to be applying them to other people, to be thinking about them in those terms. There's something I think is quite unusual and appealing about the Pelham material, is that, you can look at a movie and apply the tools. You can look at a moment in politics and apply the tools. I like to keep saying that my secret is that I'm Joe Biden's secret therapist and coach, because I've taught him to passive listen to hard feedback. People do not change the way he's changed when they're 78. That is very, very unusual. And he did it. So I want to claim the credit, okay? But it fits, it fits with our material somehow or other. That part of the material is not today's part of the material, but he really somewhere along learned to passive listen to hard feedback. And the change that comes from passive listening to hard feedback doesn't come from someone, who might be a therapist or might be your, might be a therapist, might be a spiritual teacher, might be a guru. To me, there's no evidence that one very wise, strong person gives someone this piece of feedback and they change. To me, it just doesn't go like that. It's more the sea and the tide and the wind wearing away the rock on the shore. So somewhere Joe Biden really learned to let in all this feedback about, don't take me seriously because you talk too much. That's simple. And you can just sort of look at him and think, this is a man who's working with a discipline that he's taken on. And I guess the other thing, he represents, which is about authority and purpose. He's got a motivation to change because he's got the authority, right? Being a political has-been, it's a bit hard to find the motivation to change from that spot. but being president of the United States, I guess, is a rather lot of authority in our terms, okay? And yeah, so he's got the motivation. You know, I sketch it in just as an exemplification of our work. But, you know, he had the motivation to let in all this feedback that I guess he received from all sorts of people, you know, over the years. And okay, time to let it in. So, would anyone like to come in there with examples or just to say it quickly, cease, we're looking at the relationship between memory links and the life forces, and looking, and I use the phrase that's out of Greek thought, character is destiny, and saying that our memory links, in a way, are our destiny. Our memory links, which our story, our narrative, forms who we are. I mean, this one I'm holding up now is where I need to be, not where I am, okay? Where I am, as I sort of put up here earlier, is sort of more like that, okay? Material life force squeezed down, caring life force taking over everything. And I use the personal example there of, if this work is still going to be around in 30 years' time, it needs to be organized and attractive. I need to get into my material life force, which is organization, and my performance life force, which is the part of any of us that is attractive, if the material is going to last. So, you know, I said it earlier in the session, so that configuration is not a good idea for me this time of my life. And, you know, we also looked at the diagram that we looked at previously. Yeah, would someone like to come in at all?
Well, I don't understand. You've talked about overwhelming memory links, and you're talking about the life forces, but I don't understand where the connection is, or what I don't understand from what you've shared how what the connect, or were you just going to talk? Were you planning on just talking about both, or were you actually trying to connect them in some way? I don't get the connection.
Yeah, no, your question is not seeing the connection. I think I just went over it a bit too far, so it was a really good question. Thank you. The connection is that we can take each one of them, okay, and sort of separately trace that one back, okay?
Trace that one back to one of your life forces? Is that what you're saying?
No, trace that one back to, no, thanks. I haven't put the connection you're looking for, I have not put in. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I guess it's using an overwhelming referral moment, okay, which is the horror, you know, it's the awful stuff, to better understand where our life forces come from. Because the overwhelming referral moment will have the pendulum swings, the attraction to hurt, the resistance to nourishing change. You know, I want to kill myself, it's hopeless. You know, how am I at 87 living on my own? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Sort of overwhelming referral moment, right? But it's not going to be just one thing. Okay, so my big one is, the divorces, etc. So my big one is located in the caring life force, okay? But the others will also pick up other stuff for me, okay? What's the roots of that particular performance life force that I set up my own school of thought and practice? My dad, who's a primary school teacher, took on this extra job of running what was then called a night school, okay? It was 2 classes. So it's just this little part-time night job, which brought in a bit more money. He built that up to, I don't know, 30 or 40 classes, all sorts of people coming to stuff. I can remember a funny thing, because he loved going to football matches. That was rugby in Australia. And we go to the rugby match and we leave quickly just before it ended. I must have been 10 or something. And he will have made this is an Australian football match, okay? And we were handing out leaflets about this night school to people streaming out of the football match. I can remember that quite sort of clearly. So there's a memory link there. I hadn't talked about that example for a long time. No, there's a memory link there that comes. So I think from the life forces side, the overwhelming referral moments will sort of highlight the roots of our life forces, okay? And it's a particular challenge because we don't want to do that. We just want to be in this sort of horrible moment here. We feel we can't do anything else. We don't feel we can separate. We're overwhelmed. That's the word. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, and I'm gonna sort of see kind of my understanding from my own life to see if I'm getting what we're talking about. Like I can sense. I mean, I don't have the kind of. I used to have really bad, overwhelming memory links, but a lot's happened, and that's much better. But like one of the things that I can notice about when I'm feeling agitated or stuff, like I was actually feeling in the day when I'm like, okay, we're supposed to talk about the connections and he hasn't talked. I mean, it was all great stuff, but there's something in me. It's like, well, if it's not what I expect it to be, I start getting nervous. Is that like material life force? Like I was playing this one game. It's Dobutsu no Mori in English. It's Animal Crossing, and I started playing it like a while back, and and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in the game, and then I got nervous and I left it alone. I didn't play it, and then finally I looked up because I'm used to games that you have a set goal. You kill the monster, you have to do this. It tells you what you're supposed to do next. And I like that. That's comforting for me. But then I was reading and I'm like, and they said, no, you're just supposed to wander around, build up your house, do this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'm fine with doing it. It's just I had to know that was what was supposed to be happening. And it's kind of funny, and I can go back to my thing is my mom. My mom has I can say this in public. She would freely admit to it. Her material life force is like she's actually kind of helpless when it comes to her material life force. And she had, you know, and she, but my grandmother, who I actually felt safer with. I mean, I felt safe with my mom. She's got a strong caring life force, but she that causes I don't want to talk about all that, but my grandmother had a very solid material life force. She you could, if it, she could figure out almost anything on a material plane. I mean, she was just amazing. You know, you'd ask her for a problem and she'd have a solution, and usually quite creative. You know, there was quite a bit of performance life force. So I think I feel safer when things are what they're supposed to be. But I also have, I can almost tell when I'm feeling agitated by what I'm feeling. Like if it's carrying life force problems at that moment, I'd be feeling things like, oh, nobody cares about me, nobody loves me, I'm all alone. And then sometimes and then sometimes I'll feel like, well, nobody noticed, and I'm I guess I'm babbling a little bit, but I'm thinking about, I'm trying to deal with my performance life force, which is really, I mean, I don't know that it's squeezed, but it's got a lot of issues, and I'm not very comfortable with my performance life force. You know, when I have those feelings, nobody's noticing. The first thing I want to do is clamp down on them and say, "Oh God, that's really bad to think that way." You know, so, but like thinking about all of that, does that make, I guess I'm saying it. That's how I'm seeing it in my own life. Am I on the right track? Am I understanding what you're
Oh,
saying?
yes, yes. But I think that phrase, on the right track, is really right. The way David used to say it, he'd give his lectures, right? It was sort of a good hour. And then if you've seen the film, then everyone would sort of mill around at the end of it. And he'd come up to people and say, are you catching on? Okay, let me see if I can sort of try to remember the way it said. Are you catching on? There was something, there was something really nice about it. She was reaching out in a simple way, but giving someone the room to say, I didn't understand, or giving someone the room to say, and this was something about his teaching that was really incredible, was extraordinarily powerful. People felt he was talking just to them, okay? You're just talking about me there, about my pendulum. But so what you're saying, I think, is right. You know, have I got it right? Am I catching on? And I'd missed the connection, because the connection is, and I still missed it. I'm getting at it now. The learning opportunities in the overwhelming referral moment. Thank you, Cynthia. That's the bit I hadn't got at. It's so instead of this wiping us out, there are learning opportunities in this. And we know that, you know, trauma will make someone or break someone. You know, sexual abuse will make someone or break someone. War will make someone or break someone. So it's finding the learning opportunities. So thanks for pushing me. And I think we've got to, and with, you know, particularly with this, okay, we're not saying, oh, find the learning opportunities in the crisis you're in or in the terrible time you're having. Well, buzz off. Don't tell me to find the learning opportunities in this thing when my life is falling apart and everything's horrible. But I think we've got a way to say it that it's sort of not a moral demand, okay? If you are a strong and moral person, you would find the learning opportunities in the crisis. You know, that's a bit top down, but it's, you know, these are some tools where you could find the learning opportunities in the crisis situation. I think the tone's different. I think the tone's different.
So following the path of the memory links back helps you find your unique a snapshot of your character.
Yes.
And yeah, see which were, and then my idea at the start of today was I actually wrote it down: memory links and feelings of accomplishment. And what I'm wondering is if there isn't some choices that can happen around which life force want to make small feelings of accomplishment and accepted efforts in order to better support the foundation, so that you can make use of how did this collapse like a souffle in the cupboard, and then how to without indulging the story, be curious and go back like Nancy Drew and pick up where there's the negative memory links, the positive memory links back to the early character forming moments, and wonder what you have left behind or indulged for too long. But you can start to think critically about where to put your attention for effort and action.
Yeah, all of that. And the bit, I guess the reason I want particularly the top part of this diagram, okay?
Yeah.
And that is, it is doing all that, but our particular story is not sort of generalizing. There's a part, Pelham doesn't have the whole truth, okay? But we're not that much, we're into particulars. The thing, I'd say frequently when I was training people, is name, place, time. And that was my slightly different approach to Gestalt, which wasn't the metaphors, wasn't the dream, wasn't the symptom, but this person's particular story, name, place, time. So as a practitioner, you ask for the name of the cat, okay?
You're for the name of the what?
Cat.
What
or dog.
earth?
Yeah.
Oh.
The name
the
of
particulars.
The particulars. Now, this person has a dog named that, or a cat named that. And it's interesting, people name their pets, right?
Yeah.
So that is someone's really particular story. So, and it's a way I had, just to fill it in. And I guess the memory links around this as sort of my response, my dad's responsibility as a teacher. I think he took it terribly. He had a real responsibility to the kids. And that's having a responsibility to clients, okay? Now, I was trained in the part of Gestalt therapy that was big pendulum swings, right? Rage and anger with the sort of top of the pile. I think I might have used this, might have said this story before, but bear with me. And I remember it was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is where I did my first work on my own. And this guy came up to me and we're doing a lot of working on anger and And this guy came up to me and said, in a coffee break, he said, "Can I talk to you a minute?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Peter, I think I do something different with anger. I write plays. I'm Jewish. I've got a lot of anger." And to me, it was like light bulb going. It really was. Wow. And that changed my practice. Not everyone does the same. And it also fitted because I was looking for something where because Pearl said to me, you couldn't use Gestalt therapy in prisons, and I was going to use Gestalt therapy in prison. That was just a bit of history. and of course I needed to use Gestalt in a way that didn't have those big pendulum swings, because of the population I was working with. I mean, he was working with an uptight professional population, put it that way simply, who wanted some relief from their uptightness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and wanted some release from, this is just history, bear with me, and wanted some release from everything was thinking and intellectual. And that's where I was working with people who weren't using their brains enough. So I had a lot of adjustment to do, and it was a bit tense. It was tense between him. I don't know how it would have worked out had he lived. Okay. Because on the one hand, he helped me to become strong, but on the other hand, I disagreed with him on some things. Sorry, that's a bit off on a tangent. But bringing it back here, it is going into the particulars of someone's story. And that's why I say name, place, time. You know, I never had pets. I just didn't grow up with pets. So that's part of my story, okay? And that's different than, so it's always going into someone's story, their particular story.
Mm-hmm. Can I add something? Yeah. Okay, that what struck me real hard was coming from a personal place, and then I was thinking of my grandmother also, but and clients, but the performance life force. I really appreciated the idea that it's always with the idea of the audience in mind, even if it's Faulkner saying, after I'm dead, they'll love my work. Yeah. And so even if the audience is God, and it makes me wonder about, like, there in the Times there's a article on Van Gogh, and just all of the artists. I mean, it's cliche to say that they'll the day they die, their stuff will be in museums and priceless, but for as long as they're alive and sweating it out, they're not feeling the love. And yet they're in their performance. He was very much in his performance life force. And he also lost his mind. But I was thinking of Joan of Arc and myself.
That's performance, of course.
that delusion is waiting for you there. Self-delusion. If you're not getting feedback from your audience now, but after I'm gone, it's just interesting. But I know that I lost my feeling that I had company when I wasn't feeling, I didn't need to have immediate, am I okay, validation from people around me as much when I was a kid, because I was quite self-possessed. And I know that I had an imaginative life that was very rich, and that I clearly had some feeling of connection and ongoing conversation with Source that got really snapped, and that there's been a terrible cutoff since then. And I think that without that idea that whoever whoever it is or however small, but that I'm not entirely invisible. That something, somebody, some part of me takes interest in what it is that I am expressing or creating. And I've lost that. And I felt, bereft, it's been like, why hast thou forsaken me, kind of a dealy schmealy for me. And the redemption, is me waiting for me to come back. But that me where I felt fed did not feel unloved or unseen by the world, animate and inanimate, around me. So there.
Yeah.
So just this stuff has brought me to a place of feeling some of that spiritual hunger, and how just talking about the tools has helped me to identify where there's been an injury there, the soul
Yeah.
injury, in the memory links.
Yeah,
It's like, alienation from myself. It's like, this is god awful. God awful.
And then when it happens today, that brings all that stuff forward.
Yep.
So what day, no one being there, say, then that's another strong, because of all the stuff from the past, so today's another negative memory link, okay? Rather than doing something, however, finding an audience.
Having some small feelings of accomplishment and carrying the idea of somebody on the inside that is, clapping.
I missed the word.
That's clapping, that there's applause.
Yeah. Right, you're right.
Yay me, I did it. Take a bow. Thank you very much. Like that was easy for me, and it was just me and me, but there was somebody else that was keeping me company inside of me. That
I think you're really on something there, because it is the exploring the memory links, and then exploring all the memory links in an overwhelming memory link moment, is tracing it back to why is this ripping me apart, to put it simply. But then it's okay, what can I do now? How can I find some audience? Okay. Find some group in which I can say my piece and be applauded.
Cease's work is literally taking somebody's stuff, and there's literally performers that perform in front of an audience. How much more direct can we get? Oh my God, it's amazing. It's just like cut and paste, and it's like Cease's work is just
we got to get you to a show tomorrow.
We got to get me to a show. Yeah. I'm so Zoom angry right now. But I would never have a chance to work with you without Zoom. But when I saw Feedback Theater, I know exactly where I was, and I want to go back to that theater and see people, the audience in the same place. And
and I could invite you to a rehearsal too.
That would be really interesting. That would be incredible, Cease.
Yeah, I could do that.
Thank
we meet on
you.
Monday nights at 7.
Yeah.
try, what would you do wrong?
I don't know. It's yeah,
The only, as an, you would just be an audience member to
right.
start off with. And, you know, you can tell a story. And,
Yeah.
and if later on you thought, I might like to be a playback theater troupe, you know, that there's so many troops, could be ours since we're on, but they're all over the US. So your options are gigantic.
What's so
So,
fabulous is that there's the passive listening,
mhm,
there's the caring life force and performance life force,
yeah.
not one or the other.
Mhm.
It's like, ooh, look at
There's
what
al-
happens when they make friends.
There's also the material life force, because the way she came in and said, and it's all over the US.
Yeah.
That's patient.
The world, actually, I should add that.
Even better.
So I'll send you some links for the Playback North America too. And
Yeah, cool.
okay,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
okay.
Cynthia.
Yeah, I had one more question going back to some of the things that you were saying, Peter, earlier with respect to your own life forces and, here I am and this is where I need to be. And I can understand some of that if you need to accomplish a certain goal, but at what point do you just say, okay, this is who I am, and then realize, well, I don't have to do it all and rely on other people who are strong where I'm weak? I mean, I would think that, like, just in general, like, finding people, and I'm actually thinking about that for myself with my performance life force, and whether or not I need to change some of my goals because of or whether I just need to boost my performance life force, and make it less goofy. Um, do I want to making my own school of astrology? That's as performance life force as you can get. Uh, But do I keep pushing myself to do it, or do I don't know. Well, performance life force, it's hard because you can't really find somebody else to do that for you. But things like material life force is pretty easy to find. There's, but and there's a lot of things, like sometimes just, I don't know, having as a boss, if you're thinking about, like, if you were having a team or something, you know, eh, instead of pushing somebody to be somebody they're not, maybe have them do what they're good at, and then have other people do what they're good at, and then you've got, I'm not sure exactly what my question is like, how much do you push yourself to be something you're not, or to be somebody you're not, even if you want to accomplish a goal, or do you maybe either find other ways, or
I think that's a big one, okay? And it certainly overlaps central to this writing I'm doing on decision making, okay? Because I think there are times when we say, okay, I'm going to let her be it, okay? And I'm not going to push myself. So she becomes the Vice President of the United States. And if you sort of, follow the good journalism, you can see at times how some people who are really good just take a back seat, right? Step back. And so, there are questions in there about leadership and leadership, performance, life force, confidence, the basis of so much confidence, most of confidence is in performance, life force. So, am I going to push through there? I mean, am I going to push through there and create my own school of thought and practice Or am I just going to call it Gestalt, which is very, very recognized? And that was a decision on my part. I didn't take I knew the other one was way easier. Fritz Perls Institute of Gestalt Therapy. So I think there are times when we have to look at when and how we make significant decisions. And that's what my new work's about, actually. And also the unintended consequences of the decisions we make. There is, I think I've said it here, there is this classic photograph of, a Hitler meeting in something like 1937, and it was in a mine. I think they were coal miners, and everyone's giving the Hitler salute, except one guy up in the right-hand corner had his arms folded. He was on the right side of history. The others weren't. I mean, so there's something about decisions when we step back. Your question, your point, Cynthia, when we step forward or when we step back, and I guess, we bring in advisors and evaluation start of that. And there's a place where the caring life force is important there, as well as the others, because, it's the people who love us and who say go for it. Not the wider audience, but, someone who's just saying, run for office. I'll support you. I'm your husband. Run for office. I'll support you. So I think those moments of choice, moments of decision. I'm a real snob about, like a terrible snob, about new words that come in and then become fashionable, okay? So the word I will use here is inflection point, okay? It's all over journalism at the moment and politics, inflection point. All it's saying is someone making a choice, okay? But yeah, there are inflection points. There are moments when we make choices. And there's some place, we can have the support, we can have the advisors, etc. But there's some place where it's our call, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to run for office. That is somebody's call.
I actually have I have one more that's actually off the topic, but you were bringing it up in there with Joe Biden about passive listening to hard feedback. And one of the problems I'm having when I'm talking about I know for me, I mean, that sometimes it's helpful, but there are some flaws I know I have, and hearing somebody telling me about it in fact, is going to make you more depressed and less likely to change than when you hear. So because you talk about it a lot, how, powerful passive listening to hard feedback is, but I'm thinking, I get tensed up. I'm thinking, oh gosh, for example, my eating habits, I know they're bad, but having a doctor telling me that they're bad, I know that. Okay, leave me alone. You're not giving me anything. I mean, there seems to be something. There seems to be something that, that's not useful unless somebody gives you I don't know, gives you some sort of a tool to change, because you could also get to the point where you feel like, yeah, I'm bad and that's just the way I am and it's just going to be that way, you know, and get into this very dark place that,
Mhm.
you know, I don't know. I just, and
No,
maybe that's my
that,
own memory links that are coming in with that.
thank you so much for bringing that up, saying that, and I'll say why. Today's the 22nd of May, right? So
It's
two
only
from
the 2nd of May.
That's nowhere near close.
It's May 2nd.
It's May 2nd, not 22nd.
this, I couldn't hear.
I said that's nowhere near close.
Okay.
It's May 2nd, not 22nd.
Yeah, I got all muddled. I'll say, anyway, 12 days to May 14th, which is the 50th anniversary of David Pelham's death, right? Then I will do it next session, which is a week today, because Wednesday is examples. I'm not saying we've got to stop there. I'm not bringing it to an end. And I guess I'm going to call that memory links and limitations. David did something, yeah, I want to say this, really beautiful with the way he developed his concept of limitations, okay? And in a way, it's the serenity prayer in a different way, you know, accepting the things we can't change. And he said, within accepting our limitations, we find our beauty.
Mm.
So his concept of limitations is positive, okay? Pearl's had that a bit in sort of acceptance, and Freud had some of that in acceptance, but acceptance can be a bit, well, to be frank, acceptance can be a bit hard if you're sitting in prison serving a 3-year prison sentence. But you are sitting in prison, serving a prison sentence. That's the limitation. And his limitation was essentially the things we can't change. And I think that puts a different approach to that thing you were saying. So it's a positive, not a negative. And I guess I want the motivation there to, you know, make sure I do something about his anniversary, etc., etc. And then I think I'd not really explored this part of it, but then I think it would be, okay, what are the memory links around the limitation, okay? And absolutely getting inside his concept of limitation. You know, what are the memory links there? Well, yeah, I can't quite find that performance life force and material life force that other people can. Other people have set up their own schools of thought and practice and are very well known. That's just not who I am. That wasn't it. That wasn't my mum or dad. That wasn't my family. My dad, I think, had Mary.
My microphone wasn't working. I was just going to say to the point Cynthia raised that the juxtaposition of hard feedback and oh gosh, what are the two? Well, what I was trying to say is inside Pellin work, there's an assumption that hard feedback is within a nourishing, safe environment. Or passive listening, that's what I was forgetting. So it doesn't really cover that situation of going to the doctor unless you have a doctor that's, you know, coming from the care and life force and isn't just nagging you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Mary. And, you know, some people need not to passive listen, okay? Means giving up control. I mean, it really does. There's a certain way, it's almost a sort of Zen thing. when passive listening, you know, when we I'm stumbling a bit, sorry. When we're really into passive listening, we have an openness that is like letting go of control. And there are some people for whom that is not a good idea. You know, working with victims of sexual abuse and child abuse, they've got to have control. Like, you know, it's in my training that, you know, we never use two-chair work.
Never use what? Never use, what did you say? Two-chair
Never
work?
use chair work.
Chair
Okay,
work.
yeah,
Never use
Okay.
chair work, short chair work.
because why?
Because there's something about chair work that someone doesn't have the same control that a victim of sexual abuse or child abuse needs to have. And this is answering you. And if someone has a good relationship with their therapist, and their therapist is good, with chair work, and in a way with passive listening, that person can give up control in a way that's not a good idea for them. They need to have the right to test. They need to have the right to, well, all that stuff about saying no comes from initially from this particular point that the app sees.
Okay, well, I've been doing psychodrama for the last, I don't know, 30 years or so, which is kind of related to Gestalt work. But when we work with trauma, we spend like a bazillion sessions just building up the person's resources. Who are their resource people? What are their inners? What about their grant? You know, we have, and then they do a dialogue with them. And the dialogue, they pick people that are positive, of course. So they're giving the person very, you know, they're just pouring it on, you know. So that person is really in a much different place. They may never have to speak to the abuser. Sometimes people want to do that, but there's all kinds, their resources are surrounding them as they do that. So, so it is Gestalt work in a way, but it's there's a whole lot up front before they get to that point.
Yeah.
And the Gestalt, we've used Gestalt in a maximum men's prison with men, and we did something we called their life, the journey of life. I can't remember, the river of life. Okay.
Yeah.
And so these are people who've been in prison for a while. So they're using Gestalt to, with some of their fellow prisoners on, again, with those resources. You would be freaking amazed at what these guys can do once they're taught how to do this. It's not beyond them. And it's amazing if they have, if they're given the right tools. We're not doing anger things in the prison, but we're working on a lot of these things. I don't know how to explain it, but I wouldn't say we would never use Gestalt work. In fact, it's very powerful if you have somebody change roles, like into the role of their grandmother, and at the role of grandmother, tell your granddaughter how much you love her or something. It's so moving for people to hear that, because it's coming from some part of themselves that's recognizing that to them. Does that make you following me?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I agree.
So, I mean, I think Gestalt is a great tool, as long as people are trained in it. And, but it can, and that's what I use a lot in the moral injury work. is Gestalt people giving feedback to themselves. And and we usually work as a team. I mean, I can't think of anything I'm involved in where I'm just doing it by myself almost, except for some interviews. But we have little teams, you know, like Playback was talking about. We have other teams that are working on other projects. And I know I'm a terrible person on technically or typing stuff up, you know, but everybody, we look at each other's resources, they're positive thing. And we take on duties based on, oh, I know how to research that. And I mean, we go in little packs. Even we go in packs when we go to the doctor. You know, we don't go to a doctor by ourselves. We bring along 2 friends, you know. So anyway, I found that is a way for me to live positively is to go with my packs. And it just makes a world of difference to me. Anyway, that's my deal.
I think it's interesting. I think.
Hello. Could I say something?
Yeah,
Sorry, because I can't wave. I got a comment I want to make about feedback that I remembered now in relation to, it's all about this, Cynthia's point or concern. I think in Pelham, we sort of mistakenly take for granted something about the quality of feedback that is what we mean when we say feedback. And basically, like Mary said, the word nagging, you know, oh, lose weight, put on weight, whatever the thing is. It's like, tell me something I don't know already, because if I know it already, it's not feedback. It's about, in order to give valuable feedback, you have to properly passive listen to the individual in front of you and what they've got going on in their insides. Then you can pull it out and do something useful for them, but just sort of looking at them as an object and coming at them going, oh, I observe from the outside in a judgmental manner that, yeah, you need to do X, Y, or Z. Or if I were you, I would, well, you're not me. And I'm remembering a client I had who had been a teacher for a long time and had then become freelance and was doing something in education. Anyway, she was highly experienced in sort of educational field. And she came out to Italy and she sort of came back and she was blown away by, she said, and we never talked about it enough for me to get her to describe what she was meaning, but she was saying, you've got something completely different about when you say feedback. And I kind of think she was meaning that she's used to feedback meaning, yeah, I guess people observing from the outside and, yeah, with good intentions, but making suggestions and that kind of thing. But we're talking about the person opening up, providing supportive environment, the person opening up, and then you get what's truly inside that person. Then that's material you can actually do something with and actually insert something new and helpful in there. So I don't know if that helps with that concern about, yeah, I don't want to go to the doctor and be told yet again this same tedious thing. That's just browbeating. That's not feedback. That's my comment about that.
Feels to me like it's possible that it's the passive listening to hard feedback requires trusted advisors, but that it's really different when it's someone with authority who then grants, you know, that he would or she would passive listen to hard feedback, when you don't know that authority for too long, everybody and their cousin is telling you what their ideas about you are. And the exhaustion is, you know,
Yeah.
you're just so tired out. It's real different. Like you pointed out that in the official strand, that the danger is that you don't get a feedback, and you don't seek it out any longer. I find that the danger, I've known both, being in both places, but I also know how dangerous it is for me to ask without discretion first for help. And I'm not choosing trusted advisors first. I'm not being selective. And I need to be more than ever, I need to use discretion when I'm vulnerable. No, with less authority, I mean, than when I have more.
Yeah, I think we've got to end in a moment. I think discretion is a really important word there. And I come back to the thing I said at the beginning in the way I wanted to open this session, which you might want to listen to, Stacey. And that's going over and over the definitions, okay? So we got them really clear, because in terms of memory links, it was the Marinos, wasn't it, who set up, from memory, set up psychodrama, I think. And I think memory links, I think psychodrama had, I'm not sure about this, it's just a sort of observation, historically was sort of more grounded in values than Gestalt was, particularly toward the end of Gestalt, when, Gestalt was, part of the age of Aquarius, okay, with all sorts of risk taking. So I think Gestalt needed the discipline that psychodrama didn't, because I don't think psychodrama let go of some of their values away. It wasn't so much Fritz himself, but some of the people around him really sort of let go of some of their values. It was too risky. And that's where, some of my stuff comes from.
So Moreno found that prostitutes were having, this was many, many years ago, were having a lot of problems. So he didn't tell them, he went to the prostitutes, sat down and asked them to tell him about what was going on. And they informed him of what was happening, what they thought was happening. And they all worked together on, I can't remember the exact problem at the time, but the solutions. And so he didn't make, I don't think he made many suggestions, but they started, it was like the beginning of group therapy. And I just found that very inspiring, that it's letting people tell their story, like what we're doing here, and learning from each other. And so anyway, I just wanted to add that I think is really the sign of a good practitioner that's listening.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we must end there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in Norfolk in England, and it's after 7:30 in the evening, and it's still light. Okay, we'll do the same sequence. Nikki, do you want to go next?
Yep, same time and still a bit blue out. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cease.
Cease in Tampa, Florida. It's probably about 82 degrees, and it is 2:37, and it's
Okay,
just a beautiful day.
Cynthia.
It's 1:30 and it's still light here. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
It's 11:38, and it's sunny and warm,
Mhm.
and the radiator has decided to turn itself off. So I am not feeling like I'm in a sauna, like at the beginning of session. It's just
Very.
Tomorrow is still somewhat grey. Got my broken headset, sorry. Mary and Rosarito Beach, same time as tomorrow and still rather grey.
Okay.
Coastal grey.
Well, having gone east to west, we'll finish there. Thank you for coming. Wednesday is examples. And the thing I would like to ask you to bring Wednesday is examples of life forces and the story behind them. Because, you know, my thing about going over definitions, in a sense, memory links are just the story behind who we are. And those examples might be clients, might be someone you know, might be someone you see on television, or they might be yourself, okay? But while I do say, you know, first we've got to apply the tools to ourselves, that's sort of a statement of values. It doesn't mean it's, the learning process is seeing how the tools could work with someone else. So, you know, if you could think of examples for Wednesday of the story behind some of our life forces or some of the ways we see life forces working in other people. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
bye.